Hey guys, I'm going to try this again with sound. We're looking at basically finding percents of a couple of things, and I really want to focus on the difference between finding percent of things and finding the percent that is something. So when I'm looking at this first question, one of the things that first pops up is the idea that of the word of, and we're basically looking at this and having the idea that that means that if I'm looking at of this 75 then, it's going to change the color of it. This 75 represents 100% of my item. And we know that. That's going to be one of those givens. So this is my 100% value. And so what I end up doing is when I look at these, I actually try and set up my ratios. So I actually have a ratio where I can say 100% is equal to that 75. And if I know that, what I'm actually asked to find is this 23%, and I know that that is some unknown. I don't know what that is. So I actually set up my ratio with what I know first and then what I'm looking for on the bottom or underneath it as that ratio. In this case, my percents at this point will cancel, and it's important for you to be able to see that. The percents are going to cancel. So my answer is going to be based on the units of whatever 75 is. In this case, there's no units at all connected to it. So when I do the math, I'll be able to kind of come up with that. So when I look at this, I'm simply doing that cross multiplying. So I'm taking the top and I'm multiplying it by the bottom, taking the bottom and multiplying it by the top. So we call that cross multiplying. This becomes, when I expand it out, 100 times n, and that's equal to my 23 times the 75. So now I'm going to do, well, before I do a little bit of math, I'm going to look at this. I want to get n by itself. To get n by itself, I actually have to divide both sides by 100. That leaves me with n being equal to 23 times 75 all divided by 100. So now it's just simply a matter of putting this in my calculator and I can get an answer. My n is going to equal 23 times 75 divided by 100, which is 23 times 75 divided by 100. I get 17.25. So I can get these numbers, I can kind of move through these intervals and solve kind of what my numbers are going to be. This one, on the other hand, when I'm looking at this, I'm just going to move that down a little bit, give myself a little bit more room. This question is a bit different. This question is actually saying, and I'm going to highlight it, this has the word is in it. So what that's saying is 25 is 35%, or 35% is 25. So if I'm looking at that, the way I would start a question like this is I would say my 35 is my known in this circumstance, and I know that 35 represents that 25 value. My original number is going to be all of my number, so 100% of my number, and that's where my n is going to be. So knowing that, I can now turn around and again, I'm in the exact same position where I can do this cross multiplying. I can take my top, times it by my bottom, and do it this way as well. Looking at this, I end up getting a scenario where now I have 35 times n, which is 35n, and I have 100 times 25. And now all it is a matter, again, I want to get that n by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 35 so that the n is going to be by itself. And looking at that ratio then, it becomes n is equal to 100 times the 25 divided by my 35. And that n value, when I plug this into my calculator, simply becomes 25 times 100 is 2500, and I'm taking that and dividing it by 35, which gives me a decimal. I'll write it down here for you guys. When you get a long decimal like this, it's 71.428 0.5714. When you get a long decimal like that, simply round it to the nearest tenth. So in this case, it's going to be 71.4%. Or sorry, not percent, I apologize, because it's a value. 71.4 is the actual number. By value, I mean if it was money, it would be $71.4, right? If it was something else, it'd be 71.4 of whatever that substance was. I hope that makes sense. We'll talk to you guys later.